Good afternoon to you, Mark Sept with HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Irma video discussion for the afternoon hours now of Sunday, September the 3rd. It's about 2:40 p.m. Eastern Time that I'm putting this together. So let's take a look at what's going on out here. This is the latest, the broad picture map here. Irma, as of the 11 o'clock Eastern Time advisory, back up to Category 3 strength. There are a couple of areas that we need to keep watching too. The rest of the hurricane season continues. An area that has developed in the Bay of Campeche, 10% overall over the next 5 days. Certainly bears watching, but no major threat from it just yet in the computer models. Obviously any rain or tropical issues that might even consider posing a threat to Texas and that vicinity needs to be scrutinized closely, but I don't see any worries coming out of this just yet, so that's good. And we will certainly be watching this other system as it tries to develop. It's going to have a hard time dealing with the large size of Irma, but it is also something to keep an eye on. And we're not ignoring it, but neither of these two systems are of much concern or threat, regardless of whether or not Irma was on the map. All right, so let's move into the satellite picture this afternoon. I want to point out something to me that's important and very telltale. First of all, the central dense overcast here, the shape of the hurricane, nice and round, and the eye is embedded within the middle of that CDO, the central dense overcast, and we're starting to see thunderstorms developing in these large bands that are coming in, and this reminds me a lot of what typhoons look like when they start to really deepen in the western Pacific. You get these huge bands that wrap around them, and that feeds energy and moisture, and because this is moving out of the drier air mass that it was within, the Saharan air layer was affecting it a little bit, and warmer sea surface temperatures, Irma is on its way to becoming a very, very powerful hurricane and expanding in overall size. We're going to start talking about that more and more in the coming days. As I mentioned, part of the reason that it's going to get stronger, this is where Irma is located. This particular map is on our app. If you have the Hurricane Impact app, it's on the tracking section, so be sure to check that. And remember, you can pinch zoom to zoom in, and it's pretty cool. Just posting these graphics on the app, it's available there. And so what we see is Irma heading towards this warmer upper ocean heat content throughout the next several days, and then up here, unfortunately, beyond the 5-day time frame, if Irma in fact ends up in that region, upper ocean heat content just goes higher from there. And what that means is that the water's surface is not the only area that's warm. That warm water extends down tens to, in some cases, hundreds of meters deep, and Irma is able to just churn up warmer and warmer water as it moves along. It's not upwelling colder water and mixing it up. And you can see that that warm plume of water extends just to the area off the southeast coast, which might have implications down the road, but we're not quite there yet. This is still far enough out. Irma has not crossed the 50-degree longitude line just yet. It's getting there, so we still have several days to monitor this, of course. Water temperatures off of the southeast coast, just to give you an idea of the surface, right up against the coastal area, what we call the shelf water, 80, 81 degrees Fahrenheit roughly, and then out over the Gulf Stream, we're talking about 29 Celsius, 82, 83 degrees, so plenty warm for this to be a very strong hurricane, unfortunately. So let's look at the model data. Okay, this is the GFS from the 12Z run. I'm going to do things just a little different than I have. I'm going to mix it up a little. And so this is the Sept site, the National Centers for Environmental Prediction, and this is the global forecast system. This is the initial condition at 500 millibars in the atmosphere. It's about 18 to 20,000 feet up, depending on the height of the atmosphere and how the thicknesses are. But what you see here, this is the ridge of high pressure, fairly thick in the atmosphere, nosing its way in, and you see these wind barbs show you the general flow around that, so this would be clockwise, and then you've got this trough that's moving in, and Irma is not quite on the picture yet. So if we go through the next several frames here, and let me just play it, that'll be easier. This is hour number 24, and Irma hasn't quite entered the frame down here on the right-hand side yet, so we just keep moving along to hour number 48. And there we go, hour number 48 right there. There it is. So now Irma comes into the shot, and so this is Irma's vorticity at 500 millibars, obviously very round. I'm not concerned with that. There's no shear. There's nothing to make it strange in terms of its shape. What we want is to see where it goes and what kind of pressure patterns are around. So let me just go back and show you something just to kind of give you an idea of what we look at. So this is the first frame, the initial frame. And remember, this little line right here is called a height line, and it's 5,940 meters up in the atmosphere, and we call that a height line. Notice what that looks like on the European initial map. That's what it's Levi Cowan, tropicaltidbits.com. He's got a color code to help see these and visualize these better. So this is what it looks like on his map that he generates from the ECMWF data. Okay, so I'm just trying to give you an idea of different ways to visualize this data. So again, there's the initial map, and let's put this into motion again, and we're going to speed it up significantly and just watch what happens with Irma as it moves over the next 5 days. Comes very close here, and what's nice about this is I can really zoom in and we can take a look at the potential impacts first to the islands down here. U.S. British Virgin Islands, the Northern Leeward Islands, etc. You see Irma and the outer edges of that central dense overcast, the highest vorticity, comes pretty close. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll back this out and we'll freeze it, and we can analyze this a little bit better. Let's wait for it to start over again. There it comes. Bam. All right, so now let's zoom in and let's see how close Irma does get. Okay, and I think I can go and use the left and right arrow keys. So here we are. It doesn't get close enough to necessarily bring the core over these islands, but this is far enough out into time that it's still possible that that happens. And I'm going to tell you about how to understand the wind field of this better. Obviously, the strongest of the winds are going to be right around the core, the eye wall. But around that, you can still have hurricane force winds, tropical storm force winds. But, you know, in terms of a direct hit, so far, anyway, it does not look like that is in the cards for the islands just yet. If we put it back into motion, you can see what I'm talking about. Some of these northern islands here, Anguilla and St. Bart's, just on the southern part of maybe the hurricane force winds in this model. Now the European model is a little different, and I just cannot sit here and go over this for 20 to 30 minutes each time. But what I am going to show you in just a moment is how to figure out what to expect in your area in terms of the wind field. All right, so the frame ends at 120 hours. The animation ends with Irma here just east of the Bahamas, the core of it right there. Here's this trough energy. This lifts out, and Irma just comes up and eventually tries to go up the coast, maybe impacting somewhere in the Carolinas. It's time that we can start addressing that, but I'm not going to worry about the model depictions of it just yet. But as you know, seeing social media, etc., the path up here somewhere is possible. I'm not going to call it likely yet because we're still talking about 5, 6, 7, 8 days away plus, okay? So just to put things into perspective, this is the European 5-day, I'm sorry, that's 96 hours. That's my fault. Let's go to the correct one. This is the European 5-day. Just to kind of give you an example here, it has Irma squarely into the southeast Bahamas as a very intense hurricane. And you see the ridge up here still nosing in. There's the trough leaving. So a lot of the puzzle pieces are the same when we look at the 5-day between the GFS and the Euro, but the position of the hurricane itself in terms of who it impacts is vastly different. And this would be a devastating landfall through the Turks and Caicos and into the southeast Bahamas. And we need to keep that in mind, okay? So it's time to start thinking about impacts down here in the islands, and how do we do that? It's real easy. In the public advisory, when the Hurricane Center issues the public advisory, you get the statistics right here. It's located at latitude this, longitude that. the wind speeds, the pressure, etc. Scroll down to the discussion and 48-hour outlook. It's right there. And then this is the part you want if you want to know what to expect for the islands. And it really is this simple, all right? Hurricane force winds extend outward up to 25 miles from the center. And tropical storm force winds extend outward up to 80 miles. You need to read this every time an advisory comes out. Every time. It's your responsibility. Go to nhc.noaa.gov or just hurricanes with an S, hurricanes.gov, and look for the public advisory. It's right there every 6 hours when there are no watches and warnings, and every 3 hours when there are watches and warnings up. So this is the Hurricane Center homepage. You can click down here on public advisory, and then like I said, you scroll down to where it says discussion, 48-hour outlook, and there it is right there. You have boating interest, etc. You need to read this because this could expand and this could get larger, and the tropical storm force wind radii could get larger. Pay attention. That's where you're going to find it. In terms of impact along the coast, I've had a few emails from folks. I want to bring those up. Obviously, I've left things anonymous, to protect privacy. These are fielded from our app, Hurricane Impact. I said, hey, if you want to have a question answered, I'll do the best I can. So this here from Hampstead, North Carolina, basically, they got a lot of horses. And the bottom line is a definitive idea on the path that it will take, and they need about 12 hours to evacuate. So what are we looking at? When will we know here in southeast North Carolina? Honest to goodness, in terms of direct impacts, we may not know for another 3 or 4, maybe 5 days. Does that totally stink? Yes. And the reason is, we're talking about the angle of approach. We may know, quote unquote, that it's going to hit the United States in 2 or 3 days, but the exact landfall location, it could take another 4 to 5 days. And even that gets narrowed down in terms of the core to the last 24 hours. So, you need in Hampstead to start thinking about when can you start evacuating and get it done efficiently. You need to put those plans into motion since you've already got 20 horses to deal with there. And you're just going to have to be ready to roll and focus your attention on getting that done, because it's going to take a few more days, unfortunately, to know with any certainty what's going to happen. So U.S. Virgin Islands got an email from Jesse, and the path being a little bit north of there, true. A lot of talk from the locals is that the storm is too small and compact to, quote, really impact us. That goes back to this here, where you want to look at this hurricane force and tropical storm force wind information, and you just kind of figure it out. As it gets closer, how far away is that from you? And if you can just think about it on a map, maybe get somebody to help you. And as we get closer, I can look at some data to kind of point that out. But yes, if it passes to your north, more than 80 miles away right now, you wouldn't even feel tropical storm force winds. So we're going to have to just keep waiting. The next 72 hours are going to be very tense for folks in the U.S. Virgin Islands. That's a great question. There's no definitive answer, but there are places that you can look to try to help understand things a little better. And then another one here about the buildings, etc. At what sustained wind speeds are going to cause our local structures to fail? Right there, that was the question. Really can't answer that definitively because of different building codes, different generations that things were built, and the direct impacts or not of Irma. Obviously, folks in Wilmington, Myrtle Beach, Charleston, Hatteras, Norfolk, Miami, everybody needs to be thinking about preparation right now, and we can deal with understanding what kind of wind impacts there will be in a few days once we know about the track, because the Hurricane Center, let me just go back to show you this real quick, will issue maps that show the expected time of arrival for winds. This is experimental, and as you can see, that has not happened yet for the United States, okay? And this is a great graphic. In fact, I probably should embed this in the app as well. And you can see the arrival. This is an experimental product of those wind speeds. And it's just going to be a few days for you that sent me this from Wilmington asking that good question. hey, we hope that the codes are up. Obviously, older sheet metal type buildings, trees can fall. I mean, there's just a whole host of issues. So let's focus on when the wind speeds are expected to arrive, what those speeds are forecast to be, and that is several days down the road. All right, so we do have an app, and I'm going to be putting a lot of information in here. This is what it looks like. Trying to keep this a little bit more brief and get to the point on some of these things better. So bear with me. There are things we do need to talk about. And this is not only a way that we fund our operations, money makes the world go round, but it's also a good source of information because I'm going to pump it full of information for you. Twitter is in the app. The blog is in the app, and it can update anytime I want it to. The videos that I post, those go in the video section of the app. It's available on the iPhone App Store. Search Hurricane Impact, 2 words. That's what the logo looks like right there, and that's how you know it is our app. And then finally, just real quick, sustaining effort here, Patreon, we got it. People have been stepping up to help us out. I would love to get a bigger staff in the future, more equipment, and be able to do more. But so far, so good. People have donated and helped out, and you can still use the old PayPal. And I'm going to mention this from time to time because it's my responsibility to fund my operation. But I want to give you something in return and not just a product. I don't want to sell you a bottle of Coca-Cola and that's it, so to speak. I want to be able to help you with information that's going to make you comfortable in a very uncomfortable environment with a massive hurricane potentially headed our way. My job, you are paying me to hopefully help take the stress out and at least wrap your brain around what's coming and to prepare adequately with information that's not hyperbolic and that's not full of you-know-what, because there is plenty of that out there. Ignore it and focus on people that you can trust, and I hope that I'm part of that. All right? Thanks as always for tuning in. I so much appreciate it. Your support financially is obviously important, but your encouragement, even people emailing and giving me constructive criticism, fantastic. I have not, I'm going to invite it now, received any emails of negativity at all. And that shows a lot about you guys on the other end, and I appreciate that. All right? I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I appreciate you watching. I will have another video discussion tomorrow morning with a blog post in the old text format with pictures late tonight on HurricaneTrack.com.